Alright y'all, welcome back to the channel and to some more turkey patterning. And today we've got a head-to-head between two shells that are pretty similar but are slightly different from each other. I think there's a chance we could see two pretty close patterns, but I also think there's a real good possibility that we see one that's a definite winner over the other, at least through today's choke. And we have not tested either of these shells through today's choke or the constriction either, so I'm really curious to see how everything performs, since in theory it should work out nicely based on our previous testing with both of these loads. So we're just gonna have to try it and see what happens overall. But for our two shells we've got today, I brought out these two. First up, we've got our Migra Hybrid lead TSS blend shells. They are a 12 gauge, 3-inch, 2-ounce payload of 5 and 9 shot stacked, moving about 1,100 feet per second. And according to the side of the box, there's about 217 lead 5s and about 200 TSS 9s for a total of about 417 pellets. We've tested these shells a few times now with some very solid results from them, so we know we should have a good loading here at the very least. But for our competitor, we've got the Salt Creek Cold Turkey blend shells. These ones are a 12 gauge, 3-inch, 2-ounce payload of TSS 10s and lead 5s. So we've got TSS 9s in the hybrid and TSS 10s in the Salt Creek. Slightly different, but very similar specs anyway. And I don't remember the boss claim velocity for these. I think it was 1,050 if I'm not mistaken. So a little slower, although both of these are very similar loadings. They're both similarly priced as well, $35 to $40 range. Blend shells, especially when it comes to different metals blended together like these, can be very finicky at times. Some people are going to like them. Some people are just not going to really see the point in them. They have their place with certain applications, but they can be very picky and very finicky, which is what we've seen with the Salt Creek shells. A lot more picky with chokes than the Migras have been. So we'll see how these two do through today's choke. But as for our setup, I brought out the Remington 870 Special Purpose. This one's got a 26-inch barrel on it, and we're going to be running this choke. This is an old Colonial Arms RCTK2, which is their extra full 675 constriction turkey choke. I believe Colonial Arms is now rebranded to Colonial Choke and Tool Company, I believe is what they're calling themselves. They still do make these chokes. You can still buy them. I think they're $55 or something about like that. So mid-price range choke, a little bit less constriction, which has shown favor with both of these shells. Nothing fancy, no porting, no straight rifling, no steps. Maybe it'll work out nicely with both of them, but we'll see how it does. But as for our testing today, we're running everything the same as usual. I've got two targets set up side by side at 40 yards and the chrono to get our velocities. We'll start with the Migra, then we'll move to the Salt Creek, putting both of them side by side, and we'll see which one outperforms the other. And if either one of them likes this 675 Colonial choke. In theory, it should work for both of them decently well, but let's take some shots and see what actually happens. Alright, so we'll take a quick look at both of our velocities before our targets. Starting with the Migra, we have a boss claim of 1,100 on those shells, but we were seeing 1,161 from that particular shot, so a little bit over it. And for our Salt Creek blend shells, I believe their claim is 1,050 for these. If I'm wrong, I'll pop it up here on the screen otherwise. But we were seeing 1,154 out of that particular shell. So very close in velocity numbers. They're very close in specs. The Salt Creek does have a slight little bit more recoil than the Migra does. But did we see two similar patterns down there at 40? Did both of them do well? Did neither of them do well? And is there one clear winner or not? Let's head down there and see what we got. Okay, so here we have our two 40-yard patterns side by side. We have the Migra Hybrid 9 and 5 load over on the left. We have the Salt Creek Blend 10 and 5 load over on the right. Both of these are very similar patterns, but I think the Migra might beat it out a little bit numbers-wise in the core than what the Salt Creek gave us. Although both of these, I would say, gave us a happy middle ground when it came to that 675 Colonial choke. Neither of these are bad patterns, but we have seen better from both both of these shells. We know they can do better, but it just comes down to, yet again, finding the right choke and the right constriction that really works well with these blend and stack shells. They can really be finicky. When you find that right combo, a lot of times just stick with it, because that's probably the one combo that's really going to work with them. But neither of these are terrible patterns. They would both certainly take turkeys at 40 yards, but we may have one that is a slight winner. First up, we have our Migra Hybrid 9 and 5 load. We definitely favored a little bit high. I aimed just a touch lower with the Salt Creek and it helped it out just a little bit. So that particular choke in that 870 might just shoot a little bit high, but we can still see what's going on here. We do still have a dead turkey. There's a number 9 right through the brain and a couple other various pellets right through the top of the spine area that would have done the job. However, you can see our core is definitely up there along the top edge of that turkey target. I did try and draw smaller and larger circles depending on what the pellet size was. The smaller dots being the TSS 9s, the larger circles being the lead 5s. We have a decent mixture of them, but our core I definitely think has more TSS pellets in it than lead. It's not been terribly uncommon with these Migra Hybrid loads, and especially once we get to the edges, you can see we pick up a lot more big circles as compared to the smaller dots. And that continues over here to the right as well. Mostly big circles until we get kind of up above the turkey target there again. So definitely a little more of a broad pattern. We have seen tighter from these shells for sure. So 675 might be a little bit less choke than they're really gonna prefer to actually tighten them down some. Maybe something like the 670 Indian Creek might be the ticket for these. But this is still a perfectly usable pattern. It's not bad. If you like a little more broad leeway in your pattern, that might be enticing for you. They are more expensive than a lead shell, but cheaper than a TSS. However, you're going to be hitting the bird with both types of pellets. So that's going to be enticing for some people. Other people, maybe not so much. Either opinion on these type of loads is perfectly fine, but we've got a good idea on how the Migra performed. So now here we have our Salt Creek Cold Turkey Blend. These are a TSS 10 and lead 5 shell, so a little smaller TSS pellet, but same payload, and they obviously gave us a very similar velocity as well. And it is a pretty similar pattern for the most part. This one though might be a little bit more broad than what we saw with the Migra. I think the Migra was a little more condensed. I think it had a few more pellets through our actual core area. I think our pattern here favored just a hair to the right maybe, but we still absolutely have a dead bird. There's a 5 and a 10 through the brain and several more pellets through the spine, and that would have been the exact same story if we had it centered up just a little bit better, although I don't think we have quite as noticeable of a condensed core area with this pattern compared to what the Migra gave us. Around the edges though, pretty well same story. Definitely a little bit more broad, a little stringy, several flyers down there at the bottom that are mostly the lead 5s, but through the main portion of our pattern, I think the blend between the TSS and lead is a little more uniform throughout most of it with these Salt Creek shells compared to the Migras. So that may be a little bit of a factor. I think both of these patterns serve about the same purpose though overall in their capability and their pattern performance. So let's pull both turkey targets down. I'll draw some more circles, count some pellets, and we'll actually see the numbers difference between the two. Okay, now our turkey targets are out of our way and we can really see what's going on. And yeah, it kind of confirms exactly what we were already looking at with these. We have two very similar patterns. They are definitely on par with each other. Either one of them would serve the same purpose if you wanted to run one of these loads. Both of them would certainly do the job out to 40 yards, but the numbers don't lie. We do have a little bit of difference here between these two. First up again, we'll start with the Migra Hybrid 9 and 5 shells. We have a 10 and 20 inch circle drawn there. Within our 10 inch core, we have a total of 139 pellets. That's 102 TSS and 37 lead pellets. Definitely a decent little bit more TSS than there is lead. And that is definitely more than what we had with our Salt Creek shell as far as TSS goes anyway. But it's a decently even spread. You're going to be mostly hitting the bird with TSS with a few pellets straggled within there. That's certainly a good enough core to 40 yards to do the job, but numbers wise, it is not the best we've ever seen out of these shells either. Backing up to our 20 inch ring, we pick up an additional 158 pellets within there. Still a decently even spread, but you can see we start to get a little thin down at the bottom and over here towards the right as well. But we do pick up more lead in here than what we had within our 10 inch core. We now have have 158 more pellets. 93 of those are the TSS 9s, 65 of those are the lead 5s. So a little better split between the two. But we still throw a number of them around the edges as well. There are TSS mixed in within there, but most of it seems to be the lead 5s. I think a lot more of our lead 5s are outside of there than what we have inside of our circles. Not an immediate detriment to the pattern, but it does seem like 675 isn't quite the perfect choke for what these shells like. Although, at least now, we have a number reference. Because now here we have our Salt Creek Cold Turkey Blend TSS 10 and lead 5 shells. Definitely a little more open of a pattern, not quite as many pellets to work with inside of our hunting spread here, but we have the same 10 and 20 inch circles drawn. Inside of our 10 inch core, we have 98 pellets compared to 139 with the Migras, so less pellets for sure. We have 58 TSS and 40 lead, so a much better split or much more even split between the two different types of pellets as well. You're definitely going to be hitting the bird with both of them in this case, although it does have less total pellets to work with in the core area. Backing up to our 20-inch leeway ring, nice even spread pretty much all the way around there, and it remains pretty consistent on the divide between lead and TSS as well. We pick up an additional 177 pellets within there compared to 158 with the Migras, so more pellets. That's simply because we have less in our core. It's a more broad spread. They moved outward into the rest of the pattern. In that 20-inch circle, 101 of them are the TSS 10s and 76 of them are the lead 5s. So a little bit larger spread there compared to our 10-inch ring, but it is a little more even than what we saw with the Migras as well. A little more better mixture between the two shot sizes. And of course, pretty well the exact same story outside of that as well. Number of strings, flyers, splotchy bits outside of our circles. Both of the patterns are pretty interchangeable there, although the Salt Creek may have a few more pellets outside of our actual 20-inch ring. Overall, pretty comparable results here, but the numbers say that technically the Migra squeaks it out just a little bit today. But one last look at both of these side by side. Either one is going to serve the same purpose. Some people are going to be intrigued by these shells. Others aren't really going to give them a second look. They're just going to kind of skip over them. They're not what they're interested in. There's nothing wrong with either opinion there. But it seems like if you had these two shells to work with and that choke, if you want a little hotter core with a few more TSS pellets in it, the Migra on the left is probably the way to go. Maybe if you want a little more even mixture of pellets and don't mind have a slight bit broader pattern, maybe the Salt Creek is the way to go. I would call it pretty similar overall. I mean, if I had to pick, I'd probably go with the Migras out of this particular test, just because I have a few more TSS pellets in my core, which I like to have. But to each their own, either one of these, I mean, pick whichever one you want and run it. Out to 40 yards, it's going to be a dead turkey either way, and you're probably going to have a mix of both types of pellets through the head and neck area. So very interesting to see these two side by side, and they're honestly pretty close, but they do have those slight different characteristics in how the pattern actually blended the different shot sizes. And here are the two wads out of those shells. You've got your Migra Hybrid on the left, your Salt Creek Blend on the right. I think both of these are variations of the ballistic product low bore contact wads. They're pretty recognizable with those stripes up and down the side there, but they are a little bit different. You've got the Migra having that gray color, and I think it is a little bit softer feeling. Maybe one is an actual ballistic product wad and one is a copy of it or something. I don't really know. I'm not a reloader. I'm not an expert in this topic, but very similar wads, and they gave us a very similar performance overall. No major damage to either one of them. Nothing I'm concerned about here. I mean, they did what they were designed to do overall. All right, y'all. Well, what did you think about that test right there? Pretty similar results, but they do have a little bit different characteristics between each of these patterns. Little different blend of how well mixed the TSS and lead is. If you want more TSS in the core, maybe the Migra is the best option. If you want a little more even mixture of pellets, maybe the Salt Creek is the option you want. I was really curious to see how these two would actually hold up together. Although one has a TSS 9 and the other a 10, they're both very similar spec shells and very similar loaded shells. So I figured we'd see some pretty comparable results, and I think we got that. I was just really curious to see how well they would perform both up against each other and through that 675 choke. Overall, I think both of these probably could use a little more constriction to just bring them in a little bit better. We know that neither one of these is going to be an absolute like TSS screamer shell or nothing like that. They're going to be a little more broad, a little more even of a spread. That's what we got, and to each their own on whether or not these are shells you would ever run. They're mid-priced, A lot of times they give you pretty middle of the road performance as well. That's perfectly adequate, but nothing super terrible, nothing super outstandingly nasty either. So it's gonna be personal opinion whether either one of these are something you would run or not, but neither one of them did terribly. Although I wouldn't have minded to see either one of them brought in just a little bit more anyway, for my own personal taste, that is. But let me know your thoughts down below. Is that about what you expected to see out of these two? Were you a little surprised one way or the other? Have you tested either one of these two shells? And if so, what kind of results have you gotten from them? Are either one of these a combo that you would actually hunt with? Or are you just gonna wind up being a lead guy or a TSS guy and the blend shells just aren't really your thing? And maybe what other combos do you want to see us run like this? I don't think I have any more of those Salt Creek blend shells left, but I do have some Migras, so let me know what chokes or constrictions you might want to see us test them through. But with that being said, I've got some more testing to get done for you guys, so I'm going to get back to it. As always, we have the channel Instagram as well as the mailbox where you can send stuff if you'd like. All the information will be in the description if you're interested in it, but I'm going to get back to it, so I'll see y'all in the next one.